News.
I think it's just the
All right. Good evening, good afternoon from wherever you're watching us, and welcome to the Africa Football Business Show, brought to you by the Football Foundation for Africa in collaboration with Sports Legal and our partners CBON Leadership Forum, OTB Africa, Palmer Sports, and UNICAF. We are glad you could join us, and our topic for today will be club football management. I'm excited to be joined by two great gentlemen, one Mr. Dia Sala and Dr. Kwame Ajemang. And to just start us off, I'll let them introduce themselves and tell us a little more about their involvement with sports. Maybe we could start with you, Dr. Kwame.
Yeah, thanks. I'm glad to be here. My name is Kwame Ajiman. I'm an associate professor at Ohio State University in the United States. I'm here in my second year, so I'm an educator by trade. Interested in the management of sport. Particularly, I have an interest in football, just given my background of Ghanaian descent, and since a young age, been a follower of Asante Kotoko. One of the most successful clubs in Africa and Ghana in particular. But like many of us Africans, I know we can do better. I hope to see us do better, and we'll get into the reason why I'm wearing this Chelsea FC jersey a little bit later. So I know you guys are Arsenal fans, but there's some reasons why there are a number of Africans that support European clubs. So I'm sure through this conversation we'll get into that. But thanks again for having me.
Oh, thank you very much, Dr. Kwame. And we hope there are many Asante Kotoko fans watching more than Chelsea fans. Mr. Diasala, over to you.
Okay, thank you, guys. First of all, I want to thank you guys for having me on the show. I really want to highlight, the efforts that you guys have been doing in order to change, the sports industry or the football industry in Africa. Well done, and hope you guys have a very, very long breath in this, because it's going to take some time, for us to work on this. My name's Dia Sala. I'm Egyptian. I lived in Canada for a long time. I played football professional and semi-professional in Egypt, Canada, and in London, in the UK. I'm a FIFA diploma holder, and I've been working in sports for the last maybe 15, 16 years. I'm originally a computer engineer, but again, I left the IT field, and I worked in something that I have passion for, which is football. And I've been around a lot of places over the last 4 or 5 years, doing training and meeting football players in clubs and in Africa, in Middle East, and in Europe. And I've seen both sides of the industry, and I hope my knowledge and my experience can benefit people that are watching today. And again, thank you everybody, and I hope people that are watching could come up with something new today.
Thank you very much, Mr. Dia. Any relation to another Salah we know? I'm sure you get that question a lot.
Well, yeah, but Dia Salah. Now I have a very popular last name again, but since I'm older, so he's actually Mo Salah. He's the lucky guy. But yeah, like I told you before, some people in our family, they said, "Oh, he's our second, our third relative," and I said, "Well, okay," but not that I know of, but maybe he might be in our Salah family, but you never know.
Thank you very much, Mr. Dia, for joining us. And maybe to just start us off, of course, our topic today is on club football management. Yeah. And football clubs have been a crucial part of the football ecosystem globally. And but in the last 30 years, we have seen a lot of football clubs transforming into commercial entities, delivering both social and economic value. And this question is to both of you. What do you think has been behind this transformation? Maybe you can start us off, Mr. Sal.
Well, when we say this, when we first started and we talked about the word or the slogan, the football industry, we have to understand exactly what do we mean by the word industry. We've been using it, I think, for the last 5-6 years, but I don't think it has been practiced in a proper way. Africa today, when we look at our population, we have 1.3 billion. Population of Africa, 54 countries in the continent, and we are lacking a lot of. Football is a passion in Africa. Okay, we have to admit this. Okay, but what we're lacking is how to practice the term football industry, or how to practice it properly. And I think Kwame, for example, he's going to give us a good brief about how football, or soccer like they call it in the US, I think they've started the professional league maybe 10-15 years ago, and they've done a very, very good job in marketing the clubs and working with in the sports industry, like they say. But we're going to go in more depth a little bit about how we can try this. But like we said, sports, football is a very big passion. But unfortunately, it's not run in a very proper way. When we break it down a little bit, the football industry itself, we have the amateur part and we have the professional part, and then recently we have women's football again growing very, very well worldwide, and we've seen the World Cup and the viewership that we've seen that they had. It was just incredible, And we need to learn from what's happening in the rest of the world, and we need to start working on this because, like I said, out of 1.3 billion population, I'm sure, we have a lot of talent and a lot of youngsters that have that passion to work in sports, but they're not getting their chance.
Thank you very much, Mr. Dia. Kwame, any thoughts on what you think has been behind this transformation?
So I think a number of clubs and as an industry as a whole, they started to think about football and sport more broadly differently. So if we look to Europe, if we look to the US, they started to think about it as a business as opposed to just, a pastime or just something for, recreation and activity and just a passion. So it's more than just fun and games for a lot of people outside of, Africa. And they started to think about it like a business, as I said. And you think about the advertising budgets that these teams and clubs and industries have, in addition to media rights and broadcasting, among others. And I'm sure we'll get into a lot of that today. And I mean, you think about a club like let's say FC Barcelona. Their whole motto is Més que un club, more than a club or whatever. So I think that has played a large part into the transformation of football around the world, and I'm sure as time goes by we can see the same. You have to remember as well that many African countries just received independence 40, 50, 60 years ago. So you think about these other quote unquote developed countries, they have been independent for many centuries. So we have to give ourselves some time. Of course, we want to be on the same level, but I think we do have to have some patience, and we'll get there with I think with a lot of young energy that we see going on in Africa right now, and then the population growth. As Diane mentioned, there's a lot of young and hungry individuals willing to bring their ideas that they've learned from the West or elsewhere back to Africa, but not in a colonizing way, but in an African context way. So, we'll see what happens.
Oh, thank you, Dr. Kwame. And just to bring it home, like you said, in an African context, despite the progress we're seeing in global football, the industry in Africa is still hugely underdeveloped, like most of you have said, as demonstrated by the state of clubs we see and the leagues across the continent. Maybe Kwame, you can start us off. What do you think are some of the challenges facing club football in Africa? You can highlight a few. You can highlight your top challenges facing club football in Africa.
Yeah, so I think
that's better. Now you got the right name.
Yeah, there you go. I think that I mean there are several. Unfortunately, more than of course what we would want, but I think we can start with attitudes towards sport. Kind of alluding to the first question. Whereas it is reasonable and acceptable to work in sport in the sport industry, like in Europe or North America, Australia. If you talk to a everyday African parent and they want to, a kid tells them they want to work in sport, first of all, they're going to talk about the lack of opportunity. I even remember, my parents, whenever I told them, even though I was getting a PhD, that I wanted to study sports, like, hey, you want to study what? It's like, they just don't put that together. Like you want to study the business of sport. It was either you had to be a medical doctor, you had to be a lawyer, an engineer, or number 4 was a failure to the family if you're not one of those 3. So I think you have to change the attitude towards sport first and foremost. And also think that African leaders, there's a lot of opportunity out there that they're missing out on. You think about, Paul Kagame in Rwanda, and he's utilizing sport a lot more recently for the development because he sees the bigger picture. But sport, for the most part, is not viewed as an engine for economic and social development, despite examples of other, developing nations utilizing sport as a means for development. You think about, I don't agree with all their methods sometimes, but you think about, China or Qatar and, things that they've done, the stadiums that they've been building. I recently had a conversation with Amadou Fall, who's the president of BAL. Of course, it's basketball, but he talked about this. We talked about how a lot of leaders don't have this foresight to utilize, sport for development. And there are a number of other reasons, but I think, underfunding, of course, of federations and clubs, and there's underfunding of cults or, youth participation. And you go outside nowadays in the cities, at least, you don't see kids playing football like they used to. If you go to the village, of course, you'll see a lot more of that, but there's just not a lot of, grassroots, opportunities for younger people, children. You see a lot of things that you see here in the U.S. and the West, playing video games, and, that comes as, of course, economic development comes to a country. But I'm sure we'll hit some more, as we have this conversation. But, those are some of the 3 that, that came to mind first.
Mr. Dia, any other challenges you'd like to add
No,
on
yes,
apart from
I,
the
I
ones
uh,
from that?
totally agree with him. I was, like I said, like he just said, Kwame, same thing in Egypt, you have to be an engineer, you have to be a doctor, in order to get married and all of that. But to work in sports, that's not, a very good, career in front of you. And why are they saying that? It's because that they have the lack of knowledge and about what is the real sports industry that we're talking about today. Maybe one of the major issues, Kiame, I think we talked about this, is about the setup of the football clubs, for example, that we have in the region. They're not set up as a corporate identity or like a commercial way. They're owned like by government. They're owned by the ministry. So again, the how can I say it? The concept of working in a club is not very much felt like you work in a multinational company, and so people don't have that feel of, oh, so now I work in a football club, I have to generate revenue, I have a budget to maintain, I need to bring in sponsors. And that's the same concept that when you work in a multinational company today. I worked in multinational corporate companies, and we had a big football division in our club, and the way I handled and I managed that was as if I was working full-time job in my corporate business, and I had a budget, I had a lot of issues that related to fees, to players, development, training, and it's not just about what happens on the pitch, and this comes down again to how the whole sports industry is run in from the top level. It's about the leadership, telling people that no, sports is something very, very important. And apart from the other part that Kwame said, that brings people together and the social part, but no, it's very, very important that we can make a lot of money and income and revenues through what we're doing at the club, But again, we're going to talk, yes, about the setup, about the clubs in a little bit, but huge opportunities, and people need to have that awareness. Providing the passion that all the youngsters have, and today the exposure of social media. So everybody in Africa, we know what's happening in the US, in Europe, the Champions League, and all of that. We see it day to day, and on our social media. So it's just a matter of giving these kids or youngsters a chance to go in and practice what they've seen.
Oh, and Dia, just to latch on to something you talked about, especially when you mentioned setup, we see that some of the challenges faced by these clubs is because their history and founding. Many of them were formed during the colonial era as platforms for socialization and instilling discipline, especially in the male population. Yeah. But as things have shifted, some of these clubs have still become highly dependent on the state or state agencies. As we see in some countries, like let's say your country in Egypt and even Nigeria. What do you think are the risks that these state-owned clubs face when it comes to setting up professional structures?
I don't think it's a risk, I think this is the norm, and it's just a copy of paste of the model that's happening abroad, a risk, when you say the word risk, we're talking about something that we don't know, or we're taking a risk or something that we don't know. But no, the industry is running, and it's been running up and running for ages, abroad, and not only in football. I mean, Kwame can tell us about the NBA and the NFL and the hockey leagues, how huge it is there, how the stadiums are full every game, how it's a lovely day out for the whole family, and the kids go and they enjoy the day out, and they buy merchandise for t-shirts, and they come back home very happy, waiting for the next game. So it's just a matter of in our continent, the passion is there. It's just running, the whole model itself, opening up the stadiums. The stadiums have to be owned by private investors. And this is my opinion about this, because today what happens in a lot of areas in Africa, that the stadium will open the doors on the match day, and then after the match day, they lock, the guy goes home, the people go home, the guy, they lock the stadium, and they wait for the next match, and And today, when you look in Europe, for example, they have something called non-match day revenues. Okay, they have the tours, they have merchandise, they have people go in and they rent. If they do events in the stadiums, people get married in some of the stadiums. There's restaurants. This is all wasted chances and money, revenues that the clubs are not getting. So I think that the football clubs first have to be owned properly in order to start working on their financial issues and see how they can start making revenue and bring in. But once it's owned by government or by community, they don't have this concept of we have to make money. It's just not there, and it has to turn into a business. And like we said, when we say the word industry, we have to practice the word.
Just to, Kwame, you had something to add on to that?
Yeah, I mean, I just think they have to start thinking about it as an experience more so than just going to a game.
Yes.
So, and I'll even bring this up to, you guys are going to frown upon it because you guys are Arsenal fans. But I remember in 2012 when Chelsea won the Champions League, right? I went to Stamford Bridge to visit the stadium. Like, Dia said, they make it more than just match day. Even outside of the season, you have fans coming to these stadiums and visiting. I did this. I went to Camp Nou and did the same. And they're taking care of the pitches, right? Outside of the stadium, outside of the season as well. Too often you go to an African, club and the pitch is just not in very good condition outside of the season. You have to start thinking about the fan more so outside of the context of them just coming to the game. These are all things that are occurring in the United States, occurring in Europe and other places. And I think, like I said, we'll get there. It's just going to come with some time, patience, and experience, perhaps abroad. I'm learning those things and bringing that back home.
And Mr. Dia, you've given some good ideas that they should think about the financial side of it. How would you suggest that these clubs be transitioned into modern governance structures?
Well, if we look on practically, I think in Egypt today we have 2 or 3 big foreign investors. They came in, they bought football clubs. Okay. Yes, they've paid a lot of money, and they've, even one of the clubs, they participated in the Champions League, and they were in the final a couple of weeks ago, in African Cup final. But what I want to say is, they just show you that the team that is managing now that club, for example, they've managed to take that club and invest in it, and now they are competing with the top 2-3 teams in Egypt. Again, it's about, but they don't have their own stadium yet, but you never know, one day they might build their own stadium, like just like Kwame said. The clubs, they need to own their own stadiums, like the Emirates Stadium, like in Chelsea as well, like you said, and start working on that and building the right org structure inside the club. And today we know that the proper way of managing any multinational company or any small business, you need to have an org structure, organization structure. You have to have the CEO, you have to have somebody in charge of the finance, the marketing part, the part of the events itself, the stadium. It's just putting the proper setup. But the challenge here is today, because FIFA today, they have something called the financial fair play, and I know that is not applied yet in a lot of clubs worldwide, but we have to make sure that when we start getting into the model itself, we need to start making sure that we're not spending more money than we're making, because you want to make sure that the sport at the end of the day is very fair for the rest of the clubs. You don't want some rich guy to come in and buy all of the players and buy all of this and then win the league because he's rich. So it has to be done in a very, very fair way. But like I said, the setup of the clubs has to change, and then they have to work on bringing in those youngsters to start working on the revenue streams. Because today a lot of clubs think that, they buy some player for 10K and they sell them for 10 million. Oh, that's the profit. That's my revenue, you know. But you're missing a lot of different other areas, you know, which are the main three resources of revenues for clubs.
Yeah. Just to another group of football clubs are the ones that are also owned by corporates, which more or less run like the government owned. It's just that sometimes they have some bit of professionalism. But the
Yes.
challenge we have is that they put minimal effort, especially in the allocation of human resource, amongst other things. So how would you suggest governments and these corporates be inspired to see the value of a fully fledged professional club?
I can answer this area based on my experience because, like I said, I used to work in a multinational company, a cement company, a Mexican company here in Egypt. And we had a fourth division team, and we had a huge youth division that had, I think, almost 250 players. And when I came in, it wasn't managed properly, because, like you said, because the head of the football team was asking for a budget every year from the board that they want to buy players, and that's it. But when I came in, I told them, you know what, I'm going to change this concept. Instead of being a cost center, the football sport, instead of being a cost center, I told them I'm going to make it or turn it into a profit center. And they said, what? I said, yes, we have this. We can start making money out of the youth section. And they were like, oh, how? So, again, my education that I did, my FIFA diploma in sports management, again, this helped me a lot in learning, a lot about financials and how to use your team to bring in sponsors. And we worked a little bit, and we sold some players, and I have like 2 or 3 examples that I'm very proud of today. One of them is played for the national team right now. Mohamed Abu Gabal, he's a Zamalek goalkeeper, and one of the players that plays in the US with New York Red Bulls, Amr Tariq. And those were youngsters that played at the club a long time ago, and they were developed in a very, very proper way. We brought in a German coach as well because we had long-term strategy. And that is maybe another issue, that clubs have to have long-term strategies, not want to go in today and make some money and then say, okay, I'm making some money. No, it is a long-term thing, not a short-term.
Thank you, dear. I like the way, just to echo your sentiments, I like the football-specific education and learning, like the diploma you said you had, because I think it was very useful in helping those clubs. Just to bring in Dr. Kwame, another form of clubs that we find in Africa a lot is community clubs. Like in Kenya, we have Gor Mahia. In Tanzania, we have Simba. In South Africa, we have both Orlando Pirates and Kaizer Chiefs.
Yeah.
So these clubs have operated with varying levels of success, but often struggling with having the right structures, especially to serve their stakeholders, who are primarily the fans. So how would you say they could work towards more stable leadership and management, especially still leveraging on their presence in the community and using this to try and run sustainable and professional clubs?
Yeah, so I know those are giants in African football, but not being too familiar with, like, of course, their everyday management. I can't speak to those 2 clubs in particular, but I think there are some principles that all football clubs can follow, particularly African football clubs who are trying to, I guess, get on a more straight path towards, professionalizing in terms of the business of sport. I think you have to identify, who you are, define who you are. You have to have an identity. Earlier I mentioned, some other clubs, such as Barcelona. You think about some of the top clubs in the world, they are known, they have an identity. You can point to them and say, this is who this club is about. So whenever you have an identity, it helps make sense of the environment as well, not only on the playing side, but on the business side. And it informs your guiding actions as as club members, as fans, as stakeholders. Stakeholders know what they're getting themselves into whenever they do business with you. And I think this also, permits, a sense of, balance of, who we are versus, what we do. And I think that also we have to look towards investing more into research. Data analytics has become a huge thing in sports nowadays. You think about not just on the playing side again, but on the business side as well. So data analytics has been huge in soccer, football, and basketball and football. On the playing side, in terms of studying your opponent, knowing what are their tendencies, what are they going to do, but also on the business side in terms of studying your fans and your consumers and their stakeholders. So I think we have to put more investment on that. And just like Dia said, a lot of times we frown upon some of these things because they may be costly, but it is thinking about the long-term approach. We have to think in the future. While it may not give us some return right now in the present, if you invest in some of these things, you can look to hopefully have some more, gain some sponsors in the future, for instance, more fans. I also think that you can, like I alluded to earlier, you have to start, focusing on youth more. These people are the future. So we have to put more money into, coach clubs, youth clubs, the under teams, because these people, I mean, you look at, for instance, let's say, Spain, right? They, right now we know them as like, great footballing nation, but it wasn't always like that, right? They invested a lot of time and a lot of money into those youth teams so they could produce the people like Iniesta, Xavi, and all those guys that were part of that golden generation that won the Euros and World Cup and things like that. So it wasn't necessary. They took the losses, they took their lumps at the world stage, and they invested on the youth. So I think those are some of the things that we can also focus on in Africa as well.
Definitely. Sorry, I just wanted to add
no problem. Yeah.
About the fans is something very, very important. Today, for example, in Egypt, when we have like almost 110 million population, and then you go down to the youngsters, and most of them, they want to go and play for Ali and for Zamalek, and we have lots of clubs, in different cities, in different areas, and the clubs are not working on that part that he just talked about, the fans, the loyalty of those youngsters, because you want those kids when they grow up, they want to play for their home team, and that's something that we lack here big time, and I'm sure it's the same in a lot of African countries, It is very, very important. And another issue about Spain, what did Spain do a long time ago? They put qualified and certified coaches in schools, okay? So the players, when they were practicing at school, they were practicing properly from a gym teacher that is a certified coach, okay? And then when he would go back to the club, so the number of hours that he's been doing training per week now has increased. So they did a very successful model, and like you said, they won a lot of leagues and championships with their younger squads, and it was a very successful model.
Yeah, actually, gentlemen, just to latch on to something Dr. Kwame said about the leadership setting a club ethos. You might even have preempted this question, but how do you describe Kwame? How would you advise, let's say, Asante Kotoko or maybe any other African club, especially if you're talking to their management? How would you advise them to set a club ethos, culture, and values that everyone would associate with the club? Like Dia is saying, children want to play for Zamalek, Al Ahly. How can you make someone who's living in a different city from where Zamalek and Al Ahly play want to identify with their club? How would you advise the management to come up with such values?
Yeah, I mean, that's a good question. So it's an issue that many of us, struggle with in the business world. But I think you have to start with, establishing that identity, as I mentioned earlier, but also recruiting the right people to work, both on the playing side and the business side. Whenever you have that identity and you have those core values, then you can go into interviews and finding people that identify with these same values and identity. Because if you have no identity, then who are you going to be looking for? You're just going to get a mixed match of individuals at the club. So we have to do a better job of thinking about those things at the club level in Africa as well. And then you also have to empower your employees to not only make decisions, but be creative and inspire curiosity sometimes in Africa, culture-wise, we have a lot of deference, right, to people that are older than us, and sometimes that can like stagnate creativity and curiosity because we're just going to do what's being told of us. So we need to do a better job of empowering employees and empowering those at the, I guess, lower rungs of the organization and club level as well. So yeah, I mean, those are the things that first come to mind, and making that cultural visible. You got to be able to articulate it and validate it every day in your organization, and also not being afraid of criticism about maybe changes that you need to make to that club identity and culture if need be.
Yeah. Oh, thank you. And Mr. Dia, maybe to loop you in, how would you advise this executive body or the management to ensure that these values either stand the test of time, or how would they set up the club to be dynamic and agile to change when the need arises?
Well, one of our main problems is Yimkin Kwame mentioned employees. Okay. Now, if I say we have 18 clubs in the Premier League in Egypt here, how many of these clubs have full-time day-to-day employees? Okay. How many of them, the management or the board, are actually involved in the club every day? Okay. Most of the people that are in charge of clubs here in the area, and it's not just our first division, second, third, fourth division, the management, they go to work in the morning, they have their day job, and then in the afternoon they go and spend a couple of hours at the club. Okay, so it's not their priority in life at all. So today you need to set up that proper organizational structure inside these clubs. You need to have the culture of this is a 9-to-5 job. You go there, you get your salary. You have to have a CEO available at the club every day. He knows what happens, in the IT department, in the marketing, in the finance, whatever. You need to have that corporate setup in order to run the club properly. But for a lot of people, we know that politics, when you mix politics into sports, then it's gone. Okay, so this is one issue that we need to really focus on as well in Africa and in the Middle East as well. We need to get politics outside of the game. Put the right development culture into these clubs, because like Kwame said, again, analysis and data is something very important. You need to start working on your lead. And I remember, for example, when I used to live in London, you go to Fulham area, you have people that support Fulham, and when they grow up, they want to go and play in Fulham. When you go to Tottenham, sorry I said Tottenham, but when you go to North London, you have people that are living there. Same thing with Chelsea. In the area, in Arsenal, of course. When there was Highbury, everybody that lives around the stadium have that passion that they want to go and play there. Now again, I go into the different clubs that are second division, third division. In England, for example, when you look at the second division in England, the matches are full, stadiums are full, and here we're having problems filling the stadiums in our Premier League, but it needs to be done properly. It has to come from the leadership from abroad, and we need to start sending that message. Who are we? What are we? What's our message as a club? And then, like again, Kwame said, building that fan base and attracting those youngsters and making them want to play for the club, have the passion for the club and the belonging. This is something that we need to work on,
Yeah, and Mr. Dia, just to glean from your experience from working in the different continents and different countries around the world, outside of Northern Africa and South Africa, just to bring it home, there seems to be little success in club football. Clubs lack adequate resources. The leagues and other competitions are generally unappealing. Well, that's why it's even easier to quote the Premier League as opposed to maybe the Kenyan Premier League or even the African Champions League compared to UEFA. And fan numbers have also drastically reduced, like you just mentioned when you're talking about the second division in English. So bring it home closer. What do you think North Africa is doing right And how can this be emulated in sub-Saharan Africa?
I don't want to say that North Africa are doing it right. I want to say that they are doing it maybe better than the rest. But again, if you go up there and you look at their financial statements and you look at their balance sheets and stuff like that, no, they're still far, far away, you know. Even a lot of our clubs today in Africa, we don't comply with the club license that the CAF and FIFA are implementing in the area, you know. We still are far away because, you know, again, to measure your success, you need to exactly own your own facilities, and you need to manage it in a proper way, you know. And we are still very far away from this. But again, what are these areas doing? They are working on the marketing part. You know, they're succeeding in bringing in fans, bringing in sponsors, and working on that. You know, again, yes, it will take some time for the rest of the clubs to work on. But again, you guys know that marketing is, I think, 70-80% of succeeding in any business. You know. And if you're not able to send that message out there, then you're not going to have any people or any youngsters that want to play for you or want to go and watch your games or be part of your club. I mean, like this guy, he's in the United States and he's wearing a Chelsea jersey, you know. So this is showing you that how he has that passion, even though he's not there. Now, clubs today in Europe, a lot of them they bring in a lot of African players. They bring in players from Asia, and come on, not because they're good skills, but they know that they can use this player in their club to do some marketing, to do some social media activities. Maybe a lot of clubs today in Europe, they go on tours in Singapore, in Asia. They go to the States today. Why? Because you know the marketing strategy has changed than before, and it's about, you know, getting out there and sending that message all over the world. Today, you guys, when you look at Mo Salah, for example, when he joined Liverpool, look at the social media on their area. How many you know, fans and likes and more than that they've gained on their social media, you know. So, and again, it's not rocket science, it's there, and we just need to start you know, putting the right people in the right place and getting the job done. But yeah, huge potential.
Yeah.
Yes, Kwame, go ahead.
I think if we could start to work more collaboratively together as Northern Africans and Sub-Saharan Africans, we would be much better off as well. I mean, if you think some of the, outside of sport context, if you think about some of the biggest, you know, wicked problems in the world, there's no, you know, one person that solves these issues. They come together in collaborative teams. So if we can come together as, you know, Africans as one, thinking that the we is better than the me, I think we can do better on the world stage when it comes to football and sport business in general.
Yes. It's the word leadership. I mean,
yeah.
You know, and there's a big difference, of course, as we all know, between leadership and management, a leader and a manager. And we need to use that term leadership and work as a team, like you said. And I'm very, very much sure that we're going to have much better leagues. And because, again, you know, that the holistic part of our Africans today, our build, we have that strength, we have that speed where we are by nature, you know. And again, all of these kids, when they, you know, there's a lot of foreign companies and foreign agents and clubs inside Africa today looking and trying to scout these players and take them back to Europe, you know. And this is like our own stuff, and we should be doing this ourselves, you know. But unfortunately, you know, the management, we don't have that management yet, and we don't have the right people in the right job. And this is I think my issue. Because I want to add one more thing about the leadership. You know, the education part, guys, is very important for our federations, for the clubs, and even for the players. You know, today when you think about it, how many players do we have from Africa that went abroad and played in Europe, for example? A lot. Now, how many of them came back and worked in the sporting field or in the football field? Very minimal, very minimal. And this is something that we need to benefit from, these experiences of the players. Me, myself, I played, yes, not at the very top level, but I did play professional, semi-professional, and I've seen the whole industry from a different angle. And when I came back to Egypt, I'm trying, yes, my best to adapt or to transfer some of my knowledge to the clubs here. And it's not very easy, you know, but imagine these players that played in Champions League, for example, they come back to Africa, and what do? Social media, TV, and that's it. You know? Maybe some of them go into politics, but on the ground, what do? Did they share their experience that they had on the ground here in Africa? We need to make sure that we can benefit from them. You know, they have to give back to the community what the sport gave to them one day.
Oh.
And I think some of them are trying, right? I mean, look at Didier Drogba. He's trying, but he's meeting a lot of resistance as well.
Exactly.
So I think sometimes it's not something that's of their own fault. I think it's our mindset and mentality in Africa. If somebody comes from abroad, exactly. If somebody comes from abroad or has spent a lot of time abroad, it's like, who the heck do you think you are? You're not going to just come in here and run our Ivorian football federation. But in saying that, I do think we're doing better. I follow Asante Kotoko on Instagram, and more recently, I've been amazed by a lot of the things that they've been doing from the media side. They're sharing their story. A lot of this is storytelling, and sharing a story with the outside world, people that aren't familiar with them. So they've been sharing their story a lot on Instagram, on Twitter, and Facebook, and all these social media mediums, and they've been gaining a lot of supporters. And they've hired people even outside of the Ghanaian or people from the diaspora to kind of tell this story of Asante Kotoko outside of the Asante region of Ghana, to people like myself who live abroad, or people in Europe that aren't maybe familiar with Ghana football. So that doesn't just help Asante Kotoko, that helps Ghana Football League in general, because people are going to start looking at the other clubs, what other clubs are in this league. So we need to do a lot more of that, I think, and I'm excited about some of the things that they're doing in particular.
Thank you, gentlemen. I like just to echo some of your sentiments. I like the points you brought about good leadership and management, and also knowledge transfer, and also just working together as a continent, because sometimes we feel like maybe we don't know much, but we can learn from each other and share with each other.
We need to share experience, just like we're sharing names now. Kwame is Dia Sala now, and I'm Kwame, so we need to share. It's all about sharing together.
Exactly. Yeah, and there's one thing, Mr. Dia, you mentioned earlier, and I'd really like us to take a few moments to touch on this topic, and this is club licensing, which was brought about definitely by the governing football body in the world, which is FIFA. And it was mainly meant to help clubs satisfy standards to be licensed and to be able to participate in a given competition when they meet these standards. Maybe Salah, you might help us in, let's say you are meeting a layman or a future leader in football. How would you explain to them what club licensing is?
Oh, well, before, I think the word club license would be a little bit complicated for me to start with, I would need to explain, first of all, what is professional sport. Sports is a lifestyle in some countries, where and it's done for amateurs, and people just go out there to have better physical approach, to get exercise or whatever. But they have to understand now today that when we turn this around, and it's not an amateur thing anymore, it's a professional thing. What do we mean by the word industry? What do we mean by we need to start generating different parts of revenue, for example, and how we have to be creative and how to manage these football clubs in a very, very proper and a professional way. Now, once that's communicated to your team or to your staff that you're working with, then you need to work on the competition part where, okay, now we know, we understand, now we want to compete and we want to get into the European League, or we want to get into the Champions League or whatever. And this is where the next step, we need to educate them. What do we mean by club license? Because club license, it's a CAF issue, and it's a FIFA topic where clubs need to comply to certain KPIs in order to be able to participate in their leagues. And once you do that, then you can start, explaining what do we mean by club license. The administrative part, the financial part, the legal part, the stadiums part, and a lot of these issues we don't have. The clubs here, they don't understand when we talk about this. A lot of clubs, unfortunately, don't have legal departments. They don't have their own finance department. They bring somebody in at the end of the year to do their financials, so they can report at the end of the day. But before talking about the club license, we need to focus on what's happening on ground with the education part, and then people can see the bigger picture, and then we start working on the club license issue.
There's some challenges there you mentioned, like some don't have legal departments and things like that. Yeah. There's a lot to talk about club licensing, but let's just touch on a few things. What are some of the main challenges you think African clubs will face in trying to meet these KPIs? And how would you advise the club leadership to start trying to meet some of these demands before they are out of time? Because sometimes in the African context, sometimes the KPIs keep getting postponed because most clubs have not met the demands. So how can you advise a club leadership to try and meet these demands before they're out of time?
Again, for example, FIFA today are doing a lot in the educational part. Okay, today, for example, in Egypt today, we have FIFA. They do a FIFA diploma in sports management here, and they've been doing it for 12 consecutive years. Okay, now the kids and the graduates, and I'm one of them. I was the second class graduate. Today, the kids that graduate from this diploma, they don't have jobs in sports. Okay, so again, it's about management, guys. When you have a football club CEO or a manager, he knows what do we mean by club license, then he's going to implement it very proper. Again, it's not rocket science. A lot of clubs, yes, they do have their club license available. Why? Because they have the proper infrastructure, they have the setup properly, they have a proper youth division, they have proper coaches, they have their own accounting departments, their finance, their legal. So it's just a matter of having that leader in charge of the club, and then he will have to make sure that he has all the setup. But again, it's about this proper leadership.
Yeah, that's a good point. The lack of jobs is one of the things that is unfortunately hurting the sport management industry in Africa. So if you look at outside of perhaps South Africa, and then a few universities, in Northern Africa, and then the FIFA diploma, there's not that many sport management degrees offered all across Africa.
Yes.
And one of the reasons why is because there's no incentive for schools to do it, because there is a lack of jobs. Where are the students going to get jobs? Whenever upon finishing school, outside of a few countries again. So I think we have to also be entrepreneurial. We have to encourage entrepreneurs to come into Africa and start businesses outside of what we think of just sport, like working for a sports team. So when we think about the infrastructure earlier, about the groundskeeping and the stadium, the pitches, starting companies that deal with that, so they can help these clubs deal with the pitch outside of just the game. Think about all the technology needs that the sport industry needs. So if we can do that, I think we can start to see more programs come available at these universities for sport business and sport management education.
Yes, definitely.
Oh, yeah. And Dr. Kwame, maybe what do you think are some of the top needs of clubs in Africa that you feel football club licensing has come to address?
You said top needs?
Yeah, some of the top needs.
Well, I think, of course, our domestic needs, our domestic leagues, need more support from the government, from corporate entities, investment. We need to trust in them. We need to again, you know, put the right people in place. And also something I think goes unnoticed and not talked about as much as sports science. So sports science is such a huge deal now when we think about playing, and we run the risk of getting left behind in Africa because I use the example of France, for instance. Look at their 2018 World Cup winning team. So many Africans on that team. It was even joked, right, that it was Africa's first, World Cup winning team because there were so many first generation, or from the diaspora or born on the continent. And the reason why these people, so obviously we know that we have the talent in Africa, but the difference is those guys have the training, they have the sports science, they have the nutritionists, they have all these things in these outside countries that we need to start investing in Africa so we can be able to compete, because it's no longer, 10, 15 years ago, I could, a Ghanaian football player could eat banku, eat jollof, eat, all these things before a game and go play. I mean, you can't do that anymore, right? You just can't do that because of the evolution of sports science. So I think that's, that goes lost. So, but yeah.
It is a very, very important challenge. And I agree with what he said about the data part. I help out the company here. They're the largest sports performance analysis company here in Africa called Cora Stats. And they do a lot of education programs and training for youngsters who want to get into the science part, or being data analysts or performance analysis on teams. Now, we've done about 14 different courses. We have almost 200 something graduates. But on the other hand, the football clubs today, they don't have the culture of hiring somebody that works as a data analyst. Why? Again, education part for the coaches. The coaches don't know how to use data in their with their technical staff. And again, this is something that some clubs abroad, like you say, we have teams, for example, Arsenal, Leicester City, they have like 10, 15 data analysts or performance analysis people on their teams, And here in Africa, we're still trying to convince people in clubs, you need to use data for your players, for your scouting, for your opponents. You need to learn this. And I mean, guys, why is this so difficult for us to convince them? And it's a very simple answer, because the guy that's in charge of this club or who is running it doesn't know what's happening on the other side of the world,
Actually, I just tied to that is we see many running of clubs centered on individuals or one position in Africa.
Yes.
How would you guys advise that their roles and responsibilities are adequately delegated, and apart from just adequately delegated them, that they delegated to personnel who have the right skill set? Like you said, you can't have data analysts if the head coach does not see the need of a data analyst or a sports science team member in his team. So how do you advise these teams or these leaders who are trying to hold on to position to see the value of having people with the right skill set so that they're able to
tell this guy that's in charge, go find another job and bring somebody who has the experience and the knowledge and the leadership skills to run it. Very simple. But again, there's a lot of other issues involved in why I am in this position. It's not going to work, guys. That's what I think.
Anyway, I guess we can go to one more question before we read some comments and questions from our viewers. And this is to both of you. What do you guys see as the future of club football in Africa? And how would you advise future leaders to prepare themselves? We could start with you, Dr. Kwame.
I mean, I think the future is bright. I'm more so optimistic than pessimistic, just because I see a better future for Africa, because when I speak to a lot of my friends back in Ghana, Nigeria, a lot of parts of Africa, there's a lot of energy, young energy. So earlier we talked about the population of Africa as a continent, over 1 billion people. So this leaves us with a number of, potential workers in the sport industry, and a lot of us who are coming back from the West. So, I mean, I have, handful, even more so, friends that have went back to Ghana more recently to start businesses, and I think the same could be said for sport. So I think the future is bright if we follow the same path, follow these same things that I see a lot of my friends are doing. There's lots of opportunity, like I said. When I look at, like I said earlier, about what Asante Kotoko is doing and what some of these other African clubs are doing, I think they are starting to rise to the occasion, and I think the future is even more bright if we, like I said earlier, if we start to work together and not just in our individual silos. If we can figure that out, I think we can be, a force to be reckoned with, on the international stage. And nobody says that we have to be as leagues like UEFA. We don't have to emulate that. That shouldn't be the goal. Like, we can be good and just be like, look at a small country like Denmark. You look at some of these small clubs, in some of these smaller countries that used to be not really anything on the international scene, but they've small, they've grown and grown and grown and grown little by little. And I think we can do the same thing in Africa, again, if we start to work collectively as opposed to, work individually.
Thank you, Dr. Kwame, for those words, for giving us Asante Kotoko as an example, and also just telling the future leaders that they have the answers within them. They don't always have to copy. They can have good answers, and also if they work together. Mr. Dia, yeah.
I totally agree with Kwame. My only thing is that it is going to happen, but what I want it to happen, I mean, I feel that we can reach these targets and our what we want to do, our mission, in 4 or 5 years. But the pace that we are running at is going to happen maybe after 20 years or 25 years. And I think that, guys, come on, we need to do it now. We need to work on it now. We have a lot of experience. We have a lot of youngsters today that are very hungry to work in the sports industry. We need to get them on board, get them working, find them jobs, and help them out. But if we are working at the pace that we're running at right now, I don't know. It's going to happen maybe in, like I said, 20, 30 years. But no, we should. To me, it should happen in like 4 or 5 years, and we should be up there running with the big leagues and stuff like that. I mean, we have a lot of European interest in our continent. Today, we have one of the comments from James, for example, saying that we have a lot of Africans supporting teams abroad, buying their merchandise. Just like you, wearing a Chelsea jersey. Why? Because we have that passion towards these clubs, and we like to follow them. But today, when we start working on our own clubs, and these clubs start working on their branding and their messaging and their fans, the kids are going to start buying the local jerseys instead of buying, the Chelsea jerseys.
Yeah,
thank you. Sorry, Dr. Kwame.
Yeah, to that question, I think there is an awakening happening in Africa, not always the thought that everything outside is better and best. At least I see that in a lot of the people that I speak to, and you guys have tried to shame me for wearing this Chelsea jersey, but there's a reason why this has happened, right? So if you think back 15, 20 years ago, I don't think you would see any Ghanaians supporting Chelsea, but it was because of exporter Michael Essien going to Chelsea, and that's what brought up a lot of Ghanaian fans to Chelsea. And then because of these TV deals, as this question alludes to, we saw a lot of dropping off of Africans watching the local leagues, and working and studying here in the U.S., I see a lot of similarities to the Negro baseball leagues that used to exist in the 1960s. Used to be very, very popular amongst the Black population, Black Americans here in the United States. But then when the Major League Baseball came in and got started to employ a lot of the Black baseball players, the Negro leagues kind of just shut down. We see a lot of similar things in Africa. But it goes to a lot of what Diaz has been saying. We have done not such a good job of branding and marketing, messaging, telling our story. If you ask some kids today about the story of some of these big time giants in Africa, they won't be able to tell you. But I surely they'll be able to tell you a messaging story about Manchester United, about Arsenal, about Juventus, Barcelona.
Tommy, let me ask you a question.
Mm-hmm.
How many teams in the NFL or the NBA or the MLS have mascots in their team?
Yeah, I mean, you can't think of it, right?
All of them almost.
Yeah.
Now, how many mascots do we have here in Africa, for example?
Yeah, I mean, I can't really identify any. I mean, I think about you think about the porcupine, I think about the motto, Kuma Pemba Pembeba. But I mean, that's one example, but I can't really think of a lot like there is, outside, because we don't give fans something to attach to. So whenever I think about Santi Katuko, I think about that porcupine. I think about the red. I think about those type of things. But in a lot of American clubs, they have that as well, that identification. So we have to do a lot more research. The design thinking is something that I've been getting into a lot lately, empathizing, getting to understand the users. So we have to get on the ground and do the hard work, do the grunt work to understand what these fans want. How do we win your passion back that we had 20 years ago?
That's
thank
the
you,
whole
gentlemen.
idea of sports.
Yeah.
Sports is passion at the end of the day,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I like what both of you are saying. There's like you're saying, there's passion, but we need to turn this passion into something tangible. The longer we wait, the longer we'll have to wait till we are proud of African football. But if we hit the ground running with the different marketing strategies, researching things like design thinking, like Dr. Kwame is talking about, then our mascots that are there on our jerseys, but most of us don't recognize them because of we've not probably marketed the club properly or different things like that, then probably will be somewhere in a shorter time than expected. So just to go into the some of the feedback from our viewers, there's one from James Rogoi on Facebook, who says, a few weeks ago on this show, Dr. Akindes talked about how Africans are supporting and even giving their money to European leagues, buying their merchandises. Like Dr. Agemang today has talked about buying pay TV packages to watch those games, etc. Yeah. And this question is to you, Dr. Kwame. Is it the personnel in our club structures that are failing our football here in Africa?
Yeah, I mean, I think it goes to a lot of what we've been discussing today. I mean, there's a lot of education, a lot of miseducation, lack of education. So if you don't, like Diaz mentioned, like if you don't have somebody in place that has a football, knowledge, and not only football knowledge, but a business, know-how, they're not going to know how to deal with corporate sponsors. They're not going to know how to deal with outside, stakeholders that potentially want to invest in the club. If you don't have somebody in place to do branding and do social media marketing and do all these things, and there may be, I mean, I see so many clubs just doing a post like maybe once a week, once every month, and you can't really get out the story, with doing that. So it's because we do have a lack of education and a lack of knowledge on the business of sport across Africa that's contributing to this.
Oh, thank you, Dr. Kwame. I see another comment on our YouTube page by Mohammed Nabil, which says, one of the challenges that change management mentality doesn't exist at the club's top management. So they offer marketing and management opportunities only for their unqualified former players. Yeah. Gentlemen, I feel like we've shared quite a lot, and we could keep going on and on and on and on. But yeah, I feel like we need to wrap the show. But I can read one more comment, then maybe you can give your parting shots. There's one comment here from Peter Alegi, which says, how does I guess it's a question, and maybe Mr. Dia, you can take this one before we go to our final shots. How does implementing a Euro-American football business model strengthen the local African game at grassroots level, youth, school, and girls, etc.?
That's a very good question by Peter. Implementing a business model is not very easy, okay? It's not about copy paste, okay? We have to respect different cultures where we try to implement a model in. We need to respect if there's a religious part involved. It's about that culture barrier that you need to sort of work on, you know? Some countries today, they don't accept yet girls playing football. Some countries didn't 5-10 years ago. Now they are changing. So it's just a matter of doing that adaptation to the different countries and different areas. This is what this is the whole the challenge itself, you know. But I'm sure, like Peter said, there's a lot of Euro American models that, you know, that is much easier for them to copy and paste abroad, you know. Again, in the Middle East today, for example, there was no women football playing, you know, 5-10 years ago. Now, no, there's Emirates are playing, Saudi Arabia are getting into some women's football. You know, Egypt, we had, for example, a while ago, we didn't have women's football. Today, we have a professional league or a first division league that have women's football. So it's about changing or adapting whatever concept that you want into a country. And this is the trick, how to adapt. If you're not going to adapt, you know, you're going to lose and you're going to leave. It's going to fail. But to succeed, you need to adapt to whatever culture you're going into.
Yeah. I think we see that with many multinational companies that try to come in and just kind of do a one-size-fits-all approach, and they fail because they don't consider the African context and culture. So yeah, I mean, very good point.
Yes.
I think that's a great point to wrap up the show, where we should look inside before we look outside. We should look at our context, because the people we are really serving is the society that we live in and the community that we live in. That's where we get our players. Those are the people who will come to our matches. Those are the people who, when we professionalize the clubs, that it will benefit their children. It will be for their entertainment and everything. And I'd like to give you, gentlemen, maybe one chance to give us a parting shot. Anything you'd like to tell our viewers, current and future leaders, and also if you have any social media handles where our viewers could continue this conversation with you guys, it would be nice if you share that with us. And we could start with you, Dr. Kwame.
Yeah, I mean, just to kind of reiterate what we've been discussing today, we have some challenges in Africa, and, and what business, what country doesn't have challenges? But we have to start looking at those challenges as, opportunities to strengthen, opportunities to grow. And I think we've been seeing that more recently. And I think with the more investments and more interest in Africa from people like myself, people that maybe have come from abroad, combining with the know-how on the continent, we can make a better African football and African sport context in general. In terms of social media, you can find me on Twitter at Kwam, KWAM, and then my last name Agyemang, AGYEMANG. And then I also have a company. You can look at the number 6 and then the number 8, TH, and then Street, 68th Street's my consulting company. But yeah, other than that, thanks for inviting me for this conversation, and look forward to hopefully many more in the years to come.
Oh, thank you, Dr. Kwame. Over to you, Mr. Dia.
No, of course, first of all, I want to thank you guys and thank the show for bringing us in. I want to thank as well Brian and Kyron. They're not in the show, but they're working in the background very, very hard for making this great show happen. My advice is that we need to work together. Like you said, sharing information, sharing experiences together, and that's going to work. And I'm very, very sure it's going to happen very, 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 very successful if we start sharing together, working in the same direction, not competing at little things, sharing, of course, information and experiences. A lot of, I'm on Twitter. My handle is Dia Salah. Of course, you're going to remember the word Salah, of course, because of somebody that plays for Liverpool. But no, I'm always trying to help, the youngsters, give them guidance, support them, trying to help them find work. Even if it's volunteer work, we need to start getting them into the field and experiencing the sports industry a little bit. And like I said, 1.3 billion population. I think we deserve to be in a different world, of course, in the sports industry. But it will happen, and again, thank you guys. I want to thank the audience for listening. I hope that we managed to transfer something to them today.
Yeah. If I could add one thing, I do think it's interesting that for this episode, as we conclude upon, coming together, I think it's interesting that you have a Ghanaian and an Egyptian, and you think about Kwame Nkrumah's message of Pan-Africanism and how he married an Egyptian to bring together North and South. So yeah, we definitely need a lot more of that.
Definitely, yeah.
Thank you, Dr. Kwame. What a way to just remind us all to come together as the African continent and just synergize with all the resources that we have. Different insights from our audience, and they're thanking you, our panelists, for your insights, and they're saying this was an important discussion. And this is where I'd like to wrap it up. Thank you to our panelists for your great insights. And I'm also grateful to the Football Foundation for Africa and Sports Legal for organizing this governance series, and also to our partners, See Beyond Leadership Forum, OTB Africa, Palmer Sports, and UNICAF. To our viewers, thank you for your time and engagement, and see you next time.
Thanks a lot, guys.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.